Hi everybody, welcome back to the cosplay madness that is my channel. Disclaimer, this video has nothing to do with cosplay, but I still think you're gonna enjoy it. So I recently got married, which is pretty exciting. And when you get married, you have a wedding dress, and this is mine, and I made it. So today I'm just gonna go through the process of how I made it, the steps I took, and just sort of talk through and answer a lot of the frequently asked questions that I've gotten. I'm really excited to make this video. I love my wedding dress so much. I love everything about it and was pushed over my mannequin. That's fine. But it's gonna be really fun to just have a whole video dedicated to how I made this thing. Now before you ask where I got the fabric in the comments down below, check the description. I have a link to a Trello board, but that Trello board has links, prices, yardage, everything to all of the fabric and the notions I used. It's gonna be really useful for you if you are looking to use any of the same fabrics I did, or you just need a resource for fabric online. So check that. It's going to be the first link in the description, and it's a master list, pretty much, of everything I used. So with that, let's get started. So the first step before I even looked at fabric was just looking at the types of dresses that I was sort of drawn to. So I looked on Pinterest, I looked at bridal sites, magazines, Google Images, all over the place, just to sort of get an idea of what styles I kind of liked. I also made a list of sewing techniques that I thought I might need to use while constructing the dress. For example, I didn't know how to make a boned bodice before I made this, and now I do, so that's kind of fun. I also had to look up how to install a zipper like 16 times, because no matter how many times I install a zipper, it doesn't stick, and I really don't know why. It's very weird. So after researching online what kind of dresses I sort of liked, the next step was to actually go to a bridal salon and check out the dresses and try some on and see what sort of shapes I liked, and you know, if I was kind of on the right track with what I thought looked good on me. So from my research, I thought I wanted a solid blush wedding dress. I love blush wedding dresses with white lace. I knew I wanted long sleeves because I think long sleeves are so elegant. But you know, trying on dresses, I decided I really liked the look of ivory and then like a more subtle blush hint. I did like long sleeves. They're just so pretty on wedding dresses, I think. And I also decided that I liked the shape of kind of a poofier A-line silhouette on me. So that's what I made, represented here on this dress. So here are the two dresses I tried on that I liked the most. They're very different, and you can kind of see that I sort of took the styles and Frankensteined them together in the finished product. So this first dress was a ball gown. It was so pretty. It was an ivory, it was lacy, it had long sleeves. So lovely, and I loved the shape and the sleeves. And the next one I tried on was really different. It was strapless and still very lacy, but it also had that subtle blush undertone, which I really dug. And so that's when I decided, instead of doing just a lot of blush and then a little bit of white lace, I would do the ivory style with some more kind of subtle blush undertones. And I'm really glad I did that. I think it turned out really nice. So after I did all that research, it was time to start making a pattern. To make the bodice pattern, I wrapped my dress form in saran wrap and tape and then sketched on a design. I cut it off the mannequin and transferred it to paper with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. So I made the first bodice way too big, and so I took it in, made a new pattern, and I did that about 10 times before I was really happy with how the shape of the bodice fit. After the bodice was done being patterned, I made the long sleeves and the sleeve lining. It's kind of more of a neckline lining. This fabric that I used on the sleeves, it's actually a stretch chiffon, and I was really worried that it wasn't going to last, because in tests of this fabric, I found out that it's really prone to running if there's too much stress put on it, which I didn't really want it to run on my wedding day, because that would have been awful. So what I did was I got a nude spandex, because there's a lot of lace going on up here, so you can't even tell. It just looks like my skin. It adds some strength up here in the shoulders, which is where your dress really needs to have some strength, because it's going to be hanging on a hanger and sitting on your shoulders all day, and you need it to not like fall or rip or stretch. I also wanted to be able to wear any bra that I wanted to and not worry about if straps were showing, because I mean, strapless bras, they're kind of the worst, and I didn't really want to wear one on my wedding day, so that's what I did. To make the long sleeved part, I just traced a long sleeve shirt that I already owned that I liked the fit of. I adjusted the neckline, and then I just made the lining part a lot shorter, and it stopped right here. So it stops right at the shoulders, so the sleeves are just the mesh. It also goes about halfway down inside of the bodice, and then I hand stitched it all to the bodice so it stays in place. So now onto the skirt. The skirt is a huge circle skirt. It has about a 108-inch diameter along the sides, so it is a wide skirt. The circle skirt was just for maximum volume and flowiness, and I definitely got what I wanted. It looked so beautiful when I was dancing. So after I was done making the pattern, I made a full mock-up just out of a lot of scrap fabric that I have. So I practiced the bodice using some plastic boning, and I, just used some stretch fabric I already had. I ordered 1.5 yards of this in black, just to mess around with this fabric because it is quite unique, and I didn't want to be surprised when I was working with the final dress. When I eventually liked the fit, it was time to start making the real dress, which was kind of crazy. One of the longest parts of making this dress was, the patterning, but also just finding the fabrics that I wanted to use. Since I wanted this to be stretchy, just so it would fit around my arms really nicely, I knew I wanted something that was kind of a mesh. So I knew I was looking for an ivory mesh, a blush mesh, an ivory satin to go underneath the skirt and to also work with the bodice. And then I wanted some sort of tablecloth / eyelash lace just to add some texture and some interest to the finished dress. So I spent about $40 just collecting swatches from different fabric stores across the internet. And when I got the swatches, I would stress test them, I'd stretch them out really far, and I would hold them under different types of lighting to see what their color really was. I would also layer them over other fabrics to see which ones looked nice together and which ones were not so good looking. So the final fabrics I ended up choosing was this ivory stretch chiffon. It's a really fine mesh. I really like it. It looks really nice. And I also got the blush equivalent for the skirt, and both of those came from fabric.com. I used an ivory polyester satin that I found at voguefabricstores.com for the lining of the skirt, or like the base layer of the skirt, and also for the shell and the lining of my boned bodice. I actually found the eyelash lace I wanted to use just at Joann's. It's from their Casa collection. It's like a bridal lace. The nude spandex I used up here is from spandexworld.com, which is a really great place for spandex. Their shipping is just astronomical, and I will always complain about it. And to stiffen the corset, I used some duck canvas, which I also found at Joann Fabrics. And then I also found this beautiful Alencon, I believe you pronounce it Alencon, lace on Etsy. And it's this beautiful, beautiful beaded lace. It has pearls and little seed beads on it. And that is what I wanted to use to just put a lot of lace applique on the dress and just make it look very classic and beautiful. So for the notions, I used a regular zipper that was 24 inches long. I got 1.5 yards of elastic button loops. I got silk bridle buttons, spiral steel boning tips, and monofilament thread. And then some little extra things. I got an A-line petticoat from Amazon because I didn't want to make a petticoat. So let's start with some of the details of the dress. The bodice is lined with ivory satin and stiffened with duck canvas, and the outside of the bodice is another layer of ivory satin and then ivory eyelash lace to add some texture. For the nude lining and long sleeves, the lining is made out of the nude spandex and goes about halfway down the inside of the bodice, and it's hand stitched in place. The long sleeve portion is made out of the ivory stretch chiffon, and the nude lining and chiffon are connected at the shoulders, sleeve seams, and neckline. There is also bias tape stitched around the neckline to add strength and to help it hold its shape a little bit better. The skirt is made out of 5 layers of fabric. The base is the ivory satin with 2 layers of blush chiffon just to sort of deepen the color a little bit, and then 1 layer of the eyelash lace and 1 layer of ivory chiffon. To hem the dress, I used a rolled edge stitch on my serger. Technically, you're supposed to like hand hem a wedding dress, so it's sort of like invisible, but I hemmed it. That was the very last thing I did, and I just about had it. For the closure, the skirt is closed with a zipper. I tried to use an invisible zipper, I tried to use a heavy-duty invisible zipper and a regular invisible zipper, but I broke 3 of them. I broke 3 zippers, and it was incredibly frustrating. So I found just a regular old zipper to work best. I sewed elastic button loops into one side of the zipper and so that they kind of fold over the teeth. I noticed the fabric along the zipper buckled a little bit in the back and I did not like how that looked. So what I did was I stitched the zipper tape into a boning channel and then slid some spiral steel boning up the length of the zipper and it totally fixed it. I'm a genius and I'm pretty proud of that idea. And then my wonderful aunt helped me sew 48 buttons along the back because I didn't really want to do that. So when you put the loops over the buttons, you can't even tell the zipper is there, so it looks like a button closure when it isn't. Because the button loops are elastic, they're really easy to just slip over the buttons. A lot of times when wedding dresses have a button closure, like that's the closure, so the button loops are very stiff and very difficult to remove because you don't really want to be popping out of your wedding dress on your wedding day. That would be a huge bummer. So this is more of a faux button closure. It looks very realistic but you know, it's just elastic. It just slips over. And to put the loops over the buttons, you just use something like a button hook or a crochet hook. I also put some button loops on the sleeves just at the bottom, so buttons and button loops. In total, there are 72 of these buttons on the dress. It's a lot of buttons. So next is the lace, and oh boy, the lace. I got 1.8 yards of this beautiful lace off of Etsy, and it had about 60 embroidered and beaded lace appliques on it, and then a long scalloped edge on both sides of the lace. I spent a couple of days cutting the lace out of the netting because I needed to separate it all so I could, you know, cut it apart and piece it onto the dress where I wanted. And it was such a time-consuming process. It was totally awful, but it's a lot more cost-effective than just buying a bunch of separate lace appliques. So if you're doing a project where it requires a lot of lace, just look for a big old chunk of lace and then just cut it to pieces and stitch it back on. So then I put my dress on my dress form and I pinned and positioned all of the lace where I wanted it, and I hand stitched on all of this lace using monofilament, which is horrible to work with, but it looks fantastic. So monofilament is basically fishing line, and it's super slippery and hard to see, and it likes to tie itself in knots, and it's garbage, but you need it. So putting on all the lace was also a time-consuming process because it requires a lot of pinning and adjusting, and then not to mention all the hand stitching. It's a lot of dedication and time. So the lace is all over the bodice of the dress, the back of the dress, the sleeves, and the skirt. My lovely friend Alex, aka Vanilla Guard, she came over and she helped me sew a lot of the lace applique onto the skirt, so that was very nice of her to do. So after I was finished with the dress, I added this really pretty, sparkly belt that I got off of Etsy that is also linked in the Trello board. It's pretty and it kind of hides where the blush turns to ivory really well, so that was a good function for it. And that's about it. There's a basic walkthrough of how I made my dress. I didn't keep track of how many hours I spent on this dress. I really wish I would have. I started it back in November of 2017 and I finished it at in mid-March 2018. So I don't have like a real hour count, but I definitely put well over 200 hours into this dress. Like probably a lot more. I spent a lot of nights and a lot of weekends just cooped up in my basement sewing. But I had a good time, so there's that. Overall, the materials cost me about $560, so like pricey, but a lot cheaper than buying your own wedding dress. But also when you factor in how much time I put into this, yeah, like you would pay a lot more for a dress like this in a bridal salon just because it does take a lot of time. So I love my wedding dress and it was really cool to be able to wear that on my wedding day and just know that like I made it, because a wedding dress is really a very small part of the wedding because you're all there because you're in love and you found your person, but it was really cool to just be able to say like this part is mine and I put it all together and I did it myself and I'm proud of it and I learned so many new skills. It's really cool. So really what I'm hoping is that this inspires somebody else to like make their own wedding dress, or if not a wedding dress, maybe a prom dress, or even just clothes to wear on a regular basis. This definitely isn't like a beginner project. However, I went into this not knowing a lot of the techniques that I do now when it comes to sewing, and so I'm really glad I did it because Now, anytime I go forward when I make a costume or any other sewing project, if it's something I've never done before, I mean, hey, I made a wedding dress. I can make anything now, pretty much. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. I'm of course happy to talk about my wedding dress, because if you would like to see some more wedding dress photos or just some pictures of my cosplay and cosplay progress, because that's really what this channel is about, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. All of those will be linked in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck on any sewing adventures you may have, and I'll see you next time. Bye!